guérir. Bonjour, comment ça va et comment va la santé?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program Art Gallery. Art Gallery covers the legacies and monuments of historical sublimes happening in the sidewalks of today. Art Gallery touches artistry as an ingredient of nature and the making of the artist. Today our focus will be on water as an important legacy in artistic symbolisms. And in-house here with me is Mr. F.T.Ndenecho, a writer, painter, poet. Good morning, you're welcome to Art Gallery.
Thank you, good morning.
And behind the dashboard is Dobby. I am Arrey. Water occupies an endemic place in the cell of arts. It has been greatly utilized since man became man to describe the religious, the imaginative, and the creative. Sometimes it is the focus of the painter, the other times the concern of the writer, and in another way the attraction of an architect. This legacy of water as an artistic element is most utilized by God, the artist. Take for instance Earth. 71% of Earth is comprised of water masses and just 29% of land. There is no people in the world who do not recognize the gigantic strengths of the Atlantic, the Pacific, and Indian Oceans. Rain is also used as a vital ingredient in the arts of nature. For it to happen, the cumulus nimbus clouds pregnant with water replace the cirrostratus clouds, and the music of thunder and the sparks of lightning herald the systemic coming. Sometimes it is a cool breeze that stirs, sometimes it is the violent storm that humbles giant baobabs with mighty falls, while straw houses are blown like stones from catapults. Then God, in his artistic utilization of water, crafts the liquid into all shades and forms. There is the tiny stream that winds and runs like a human capillary. There is the river that bubbles with foamy brims into the sea, the lakes that stand still with fathomless depths, or the lakes that grumble like bubbling geysers. There are the springs that ooze from rock crevices, the brooks that sparkle like crystals, the seas that marry the horizons, and the great oceans with waved mountains that link the continents. One cannot lose sight of the fact that even when in the deserts the luminescent sands stretch forth, man always hopes to see an oasis for his cravings and the needs of his camel. Mr. Ndenecho, what can we gather from the etymology of the word water?
Water basically is Anglo-Saxon derivation. Actually, the basis is from the Latin aqua, and from aqua is my Latin phrase that describes different kinds of water, various liquids which are likened to water, and it develops along various lines. Hence, you have all the aqua-based words, like you have aqua vitae, water of life. You have aquarium, aquarel, aqua pura, and all that. They have a series of words like that, all describing water, and it's based on this idea of water being a colorless, limpid liquid. And we all know the compounds of water: hydrogen and oxygen in proportions of 2 volumes, 2 parts of hydrogen to 1 part of oxygen, and water being basically a refresher, a cleanser, a rejuvenator, and a bringer of life.
A part of this natural representation of water as a vital ingredient in the fabric of nature, it also has as purpose by its creator to cause continuous existence of nature. Man needs an average of 5 liters of water a day. The blood in man is transported because of its water content to meet up with the biological needs of man. Water is a natural aid to digestion. It is the reason why the roots of plants bore into the earth, and its absence explains why flowers wither. It is also a medium of life for several hundreds of species, from the green algae to the frog, a plethora of fish to unicellular microorganisms like the amoeba. But water has also preoccupied several writers and poets in their symbolism. Probably you would like to tell us something about the influence of water in artistic representations.
Yes, if you go back into the basics of artistry, you discover that a painting brings a picture of something which is not present in its environment. So if, for example, you are in a desert, you would have a painting of depicting a lot of water to give the impression of being near that source. So water has always come in this respect to give an aspect of plentiful abundance of life and freshness. So it comes in various respects. You have paintings, you have water spouts and fountains. Like the most popular example, like if you see in front of the presidency, you find there's a water spout there, there's water fountains. This is using water in an architectural framework. It can also be used to do what is called a cascade. Flowing water running down sheets of glass. Water has also come into music in various aspects. You find the famous song Paul Simon sang, "Like a bridge over troubled waters I would lay me down." You find water again coming up in the Bible. Heavy symbolism there. Fountain of life, baptism, the basic symbolism of giving purity, cleansing, being born anew. Water again. You find the famous parable of Jesus calming the seas, walking over the waters, feeding the thousands, the multitudes. Always water behind there. And then you have the color and the linkage between water and the Italian version. If you look in the Italian version, it's so particular because water is la mare, and the word mother in Italian is madre, and from there we have the French mère, which is also the same thing. So you find the symbolism, the link between the word water and mother again. So it's very, very close.
Even in our local parlance, we always link Mami Water and so on. That's very popular amongst the Batanga people and the coastal peoples. Water has also preoccupied several writers and poets, as we were saying. John Milton, in his poem L'Allegro, invokes the river Styx when he utilizes the word Stygian. This river is believed to be that which the boatman Charo rows the souls of the dead to the other world. This invocation is an influence from Greek mythology. Christopher Okigbo, in his poem Heaven's Gate, also invokes his village stream Idoto, which he refers to as mother. In part 1 of this poem titled The Passage, Idoto is given godly stature and power to solve the internal crisis of the poet. Okigbo states in quotes, "Out of the depths of my cry, give ear and hearken." The poem started thus, in quotes, "Before you, Mother Idoto, naked I stand to nature's watery goddess." Henry Peters also used water in poetic symbolisms when he wrote that, in quotes, "Turning the chained and fated pages was like fumbling with soft life. Melted years melted into the ocean of pages clouded and wet with tears." Wole Soyinka in Ulysses states, in quotes, "The rain's harrowing passion," end of quotes, and also wrote, in quotes, "Tobacco shreds, weaving space inflated to a swirl of dancing seas and pygmy fountains." Well, you can see that most of these poets have been like preoccupying themselves with elements about water, and I think it goes right deep into our appraisal of basic architectural designs and even those paintings that depict natural scenes. Most of them, look at the paintings about the hanging valleys of and hanging gardens of Babylon. I think they cannot go without some streamers passing through the greenery.
You are quite right, and if you see, water not only enhances a building, it also is used as a physical representation of design. You are actually using something which is live and moving in design, and it is not a situation that began now. It's a situation that has been for centuries. The hanging gardens of Babylon, you are talking, those are centuries. We are talking about the 4th century here. You can also talk about later on something about 14th century, the Mona Lisa, very famous painting that everybody knows, but a lot of people do not realize that behind the Mona Lisa, the background of the Mona Lisa shows a flowing stream. Now that stream was a representation of the mind of the poser, the lady who posed for the picture. A stream normally is used to show tranquility, freshness, and that kind of symbolism always comes in.
And nature, what is natural.
Exactly. And we cannot forget the fact that you always use water is always the basis of civilization. And so we've had a lot of big civilizations which have sprang up from areas of water, like the famous Babylon, as we know, which is in supposedly in present-day Iraq. Around the region is tipped to be there,
yes,
where the Tigris and Euphrates flowed. You have the Nile, you have the Mississippi, and you have the Amazon. All those major rivers have always sprouted civilizations of Yangtze Kiang in China, and all that is always civilization around it. And areas where people have not had water like that, rivers, streams flowing, they have gone through thick and thin, enormous lengths, in fact, to get water, and it's built up a kind of culture around it.
Especially the desert dwellers and those who stay at the rocky areas.
There's a very remarkable example. In Afghanistan, in north of Afghanistan, they have desert areas there, and the only means of them getting, the people getting water, is to climb up mountains, break off chunks of ice from the tops of the mountains, and bring them down by donkey, and melt them down to get water to drink. The Bushmen of the Kalahari too have developed techniques of surviving in the desert, harvesting water from plants like desert cacti, what you call the cactus. You harvest water from cactus, breaking up the innards to drink water. And then the famous baobab, which stores water, has also served as a means of water for various desert people.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned to the program Art Gallery, and in-house here with me is Mr. F.T.Ndenecho. He's a poet, a writer, and a painter. In Ghana, many tribes believe that when one dies, his soul goes to a place called Samansie. But each soul can only get there crossing a sacred river to meet the keeper of souls called Amokie. When people die, sacrifices are made to appease Amokie and the other souls of Samansie, so that the crossing of the dead one will be possible across that river. The Yoruba people also believe that, like Christopher Okigbo believed about River Idoto, that Oshun is their mystical river, greatly linked to other mythologies and mystics attached to Ogun. Bathing in ocean is regarded as a purification rite, which means that water is some kind of universally acclaimed positive ingredient in the fabric of nature's art.
You are quite right. Wherever you go, the story is always the same. Whether it's in Latin America, you have the Apura, which is a river which flows through Venezuela. It flows right down to the Orinoco Basin. You go down to South Peru, you find the Apurinac, who's going towards that area of Pure. You come here, you have the Sanaga, which flows down. There's various rites which are linked to the Sanaga. You go down, you have the Mezam in the northwest, and there are even rivers in the Manyu area, which are like serve as a guarantee of the people's culture. They say in local parlance, you cannot cross with some unhealthy magic across those rivers. So you see, you find that water now has this property of representing a whole culture and even defending a people.
Yeah, amongst the Bakuri people, it is believed that there is the Nyango Namuna who stays in the sea, and it is going to be very, very unhealthy to pass across the Atlantic with some magical potions that are dangerous to the health of this society. Yeah. And do you know God has actually used water to vent his anger several times in 40 days, 40 nights, and in Noah's days. And a lot of people say that certain storms of today are founded on the anger of nature.
Exactly. You see, water is a double-bladed, so a double-edged sword. It depends on the way you use it or the way you look at it. At one time, water can be your source of purity, and the other time it can be your source of death. Water is one of the basic elements of life, the basic 5 elements which were considered by the old ethos of ancient mysticism. You had earth, wind, water, fire, and ether. So water was one of them, and you find water being a poison when it is used in one way, and also being a source of life when it's used in another way. So basically you would find again a situation where in you find the word Aquarius referring to the 11th sign of the zodiac. Now that shows you another instinct of water being represented even in the stars, unified, a constellation grouped and arranged to look like a water bearer. Aquarius is the water bearer. Now that also shows another aspect of water being universalized in an aspect of mysticism, ancient magic.
Yeah, the artistry of the horoscope, and there is the strong scientific proof that the moon influences the high tides and the low tides of the ocean. Well, biblically in Canaan, Jesus converted water into wine. Jesus had walked on water, and that actually proved to Peter that God was superior to man. But besides these mystical depictions of water, it is also an important flavor in the broth of war. Nations target the ports and strategic rivers when invading an enemy. American troops, for instance, have docked in Turkey in order to attack Iraq from the north, just like they did in the Horn of Africa to attack Somalia in Operation Restore Hope.
You're quite right. It is a very, very serious strategic advantage to occupy a waterfront in cases of a war. Like in the present situation now in the Gulf, as we were saying, the Americans have stationed their cruise missiles and their battleships, which from that vantage point can easily strike interland. You also have a situation where recently in Congo, the aid agencies have used ships to move in with an unprecedented amount of food aid. There was no way to go through the difficult terrain because it's dense equatorial forest. The only way was to go by river.
So certain bases are also constructed as strategic islands to control the movement of watercrafts, such as in the case of the American base in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean.
You're quite right.
And painters have depicted magical scenes on their canvas by their inspirations from water. Their water paints as mediums confluence with their mental pictures they have memorized to invoke our artistic dependence on their final product. Well, you know, a lot of painters and watercolorists, they use water in the mixture of their material.
You're quite right. Water serves as is one of the mediums in painting, because you have various mediums. You have tempera, you have oil, and you also have water, as well as other aspects. You also have another kind of painting called it's actually etching, called aqua tint. It's a form of engraving, which means that engraving means you actually burn lines across paper or metal. So it's another form of painting, and it's very delicate, because when you're dealing with watercolor, you don't make a mistake, because it can never be corrected.
Bonjour, comment ça va et comment va la santé? Bonjour, comment ça va et comment va la santé?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned to the program Art Gallery. I am Arrey and in-house here with me is Mr. F.T.Ndenecho, a painter, a writer, and a poet. Behind the dashboard is the B. Several movies have also been set in water. The Titanic, acted by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, and produced by James Cameron. The Blue Lagoon, acted by Brooke Shields. Ijele, acted by Genevieve Nnaji. What contributions do you have about that? What has prompted these producers to use this kind of settings?
Water has always carried a mystique of its own. You know, when you go into the deep blue, as the sea is called, it's a realm of its own, it's a world of its own. It holds a lot of adventure, it holds a lot of danger, it holds a lot of surprises. It is a totally different area. So in situating films in water, it gives directors a lot of possibilities to open up new ventures, new ways of organizing and representing scenes of tension, scenes of love, scenes of romance, and generally new adventure. You find in the Titanic, which was actually a situation where you say the life, you know, is actually more interesting than fiction. It's a real story, and it's a whole drama presented on a ship. It gave a lot of opportunity for Cameron to display his artistry. In fact, actually that film went over budget in such a way that they had to run the film down to Mexico to make costs cheaper. Later on, it still went so far over budget that he had to actually give up his salary for the film. But later on, he made so much money that the finances of the film actually gave him back his money because he made them so much money.
Well, what shade of blue will you actually like to go with water? A lot of people are on some kind of fix as to the gray that comes from the cloudy heavens when it's about to rain, the blue that comes from a cirrus cloud, clouded above. There is also the sunset, and when there is this coolness of the ocean, where the ocean seems to be meeting with the horizon. What color would you like to? Is it going to be aquamarine green or something? What best suits the description of the various watery mazes?
I take water based on the painting that God does, the painting that nature does. You know, water basically doesn't have any color. It simply takes on the color that weather paints on it. We have water next to us here, where this is the Ocean City region, we are next to the ocean. But unfortunately, a lot of people who live in this town don't notice that it is the sea and its various aspects of color and changing that pulls so many people down here. You go down in clear light, water becomes white. In situations of clear sun, it can become turquoise green. In situations of mid weather, it can turn into blue. In the evening, in a stormy situation, it can turn to gray, and in the night it can turn to inky blue. So water is a situation which is constantly evolving, and it depends. It can turn silvery white in the afternoon sun. So it's just a question of where you are, your perspective, and it follows moods. Fishermen down at the beach will always know what the water pertains depending on the color.
If it is gray, what feelings does it invoke?
Gray will give you feelings of bleakness. For a fisherman, he will determine there's a storm probably brewing somewhere. As I said, for a romantic who will think it's bleak, and it may affect his mood in that manner.
And it's forlorn.
Exactly.
What about the blue or the aquamarine green?
The aquamarine green gives you vistas into new adventure. The blue gives you mystery. It is not for nothing that the famous computer, which constantly plays matches against the most famous chess masters, is called Deep Blue.
The adventures of Captain Sinbad caught the eyes of adults as well as infants, and the viewers are expanding even more now that these adventures exist in cartoons and video games. The Jewel of the Nile, acted by Michael Douglas, is also a typical example where scenes of water have been employed to catch the visual in the area of cinematography. Well, apart from this aspect of water being a very important element in the appreciation of a painter's art, a lot of architects, even now, wedding cakes are being made with certain spirals of water passing through the topography of the cake. How do you appreciate wedding cakes that have fountains and springs, or how do you appreciate the naturality of a spring oozing out from black rocks and so on? If you were to depict that, what is going to be the life of your painting?
I go back to the Orientals. They were the best. They had the best depiction of paintings in real life. The Japanese and the Chinese always included water in their gardens, running and still, to represent parts of nature and parts of either tranquility, despondency, coolness. Always they had this idea of perfect balance, and in my paintings I always use water as that aspect of reflecting either a stormy passion or a cool reflection. Reflection now meaning the mind, cooling yourself down, being in a situation where you can reflect on life, and so that brings you what you call balance in your in the picture. That's called balance, and it can be used in any form. It will always be advisable if you have a good land site. If you could have running water around, let it flow through your land site. If you organize it properly, it gives you a wonderful depiction. For example, look at the river flowing right close to the Botanic Gardens. That is one of the most wonderful aspects about the garden. It meanders through, flowing and emptying itself down into the sea. That's very, very lovely, and a lot of people come and stand only on the bridge just looking at the water for ages. There's a natural pool which is at the beach, one of our famous beaches up along the coastline at Seme. That pool is very, very attractive, and a lot of people go there specifically to hang around the pool.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned to the program Art Gallery, and also many development schemes have had their artistic concepts from water. The design of bridges and flyovers to the generation of hydroelectricity power. The turbines spinning in East Cameroon are in the Sanaga River, just like the Tennessee Valley Authority is from the Tennessee, and the Volta River project. The Aswan Dam and the Suez Canal in Egypt are also important torchbearers of water.
You are quite right. You have, and those you mentioned Panama, and also in Egypt. Those waterways have always been a very serious contention in international economics and politics. You have situations where they have come up with a lot of crises. You had the Suez crisis, which was a very, very major situation, which almost brought total terror.
Yeah, the crisis between Morocco and Spain, I think, over the Straits of Gibraltar.
Yes, you had that too, and you had the question of Panama, and Panama was virtually an American colony on basis of a shipping lane which had to go through Panama, but later on obviously they had to hand it back to Panama. You had the situation of Goa in India, where the British, the Portuguese created a small port enclave because they had to have access for their ships. You have Hong Kong, which was handed over back was because we were looking for waterways, seas, ports, and the taipans of China. They were all shipping magnates. You had the East India Company, the British East India Company was a shipping line. You have the Greeks who made their name in shipping. That's where they had their money. You have also Liberia, which has made its major export was basically shipping lines.
And
today,
water has really offered a lot of negative consequences to a people Remember, it was through the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans that several thousands of slaves were carried to work at the plantations in America, and is definitely responsible for the black diaspora. Water has also acted as a point of conflict with a lot of people who believe that it has some sacredness. Some tribes fight with one another because of the fact that they want to own certain rivers. And well, to round up this program, Art Gallery, what other things, what can you tell us as a conclusion as to the importance of water as a very important ingredient in the fabric of nature's art?
I would say two things. One, the beauty and tranquility of the isolation of the Antarctic. It is the most beautiful and desolate place in the world, colored by water and representing only one shade of color, absolute whiteness. And that's where all our water comes from. If the Antarctic were to melt down, the world will be flooded.
Well, legend holds that King Arthur was carried in a watercraft, and he was being driven or gliding on water to be taken to the land of the beyond, when Excalibur had been thrown back into the mere.